Finally, we have a good control of our fundamentals. We have seen all the things that we need to carry out completely by ourselves a representative painting, and we know more about this neo-metaphysic idea. So it's time now to see how all these things are gonna help us carrying out our first neo-metaphysic painting. Before we start working on the canvas, we have to remember that our target is to represent the model that we have created in the last video, somehow trying to generate in the people watching it the impression to see a photo. By our definition of photographic representation, to carry out our painting, we have to represent the number of details that we see, setting them in the right positions, respecting their shapes, choosing the right colors, the lighting and the point of view consistencies, and we also have to represent the photographic effects that we have chosen. The lighting and the point of view consistencies in our model have been ensured by the 3D editor that, making millions of calculations, has produced the render with the point of view that we have chosen and the lighting that we have set. Well, with the photo editor, we took care about the photographic effects. So unless we make a very bad job, they shouldn't be a problem. We know already that to ensure the positions and the shapes in our painting, at first we have to work on the sketch to set on our support the reference that we need to respect them. Then, using what we have called the representative analysis, we are going to check what we have on our model. We're going to make a strategy based on the fundamentals, and we're going to paint it on our support. Before we start, I want to make a last consideration. Since one of the reasons why I like this representation other than the bridge is because of the light, which is the light of an early sunset represented not in a classic silhouette way, but right in the opposite direction, here I want to try to emphasize this light by warming up the colors where necessary to make the sunset feeling become stronger. Now that we finally have a clear idea on the target and on what we have to do to reach it, we can start working. The first thing that we have to do is the sketch, where we are also going to finalize the last part of the framing. To start, we're going to hang our canvas on a wall. We're going to set our projector right in front, and we're going to turn off the light and on the projector. We're going to work on the image, making sure that it's perfectly rectangular and with the right proportions. Then, zooming in or out, we're going to complete the framing, choosing what part of this scene we want to represent. Now, as we did before, following the shapes of our subjects, one piece at a time, we're going to carry out our sketch. As we said, the type of sketch that a painter needs to do his works is really personal, and as you can see, I don't really need very accurate drawings. My sketches are always quite ugly, and this is because I really use them just as a reference. For my style of painting, I prefer to carry all the details out using the representative analysis, but this is up to you. The only very important thing that we want to be sure about is that this time our representative analysis must be very accurate, unlike what we did in the last painting. As first, we have to decide where we're going to start our representation. Here, we're going to commence our work from the stairs and the background, and we're going to end it working on the dummy. We're going to start on the top left corner. To refresh the concept of representative analysis, now we have to focus on one detail at a time. We have to make a strategy based on the fundamentals, and accordingly we have to paint that detail on the support. Then we have to go back to check that every part that we have represented fits the scene in the correct way, and if eventually we made some mistake, we have to correct them. For example, these steps are made by many small uniform areas of different colors. we know very well how to paint them and how to manage eventual problems. So one piece at a time, we are going to see what color and what shape we have on our model, and we're going to paint it on the support using the sketch as a reference. Since these steps are slightly out of focus, we want to make sure that the border lines between those areas are a little bit blurry. Our strategy in this case is to make a short transition between all these colored spots. So, as we have seen, to get these effects, we should keep brushing a few times over the border, following its path. Here, we should also start to get an idea on what we want to do on this top part of the sky. On the left, our strategy is easy. We're gonna paint this area uniformly with a light blue. While on the right, things start to be more complicated because we have a blurred cloud. To start, we're gonna continue painting the top part uniformly with the same light blue. We're gonna paint uniformly with some white this top part of the cloud, and with some light cyan the area below. Since here the background is very blurry, we have to turn these sharp borders into middle-length transitions. As we have seen, to make this kind of transition, we have to keep brushing in the fading lines direction, moving slowly from one area to the other. Let's stop for a second and let's watch our model. If we check carefully, we can see that the blue and the cyan areas that we have painted uniformly in our model aren't. So we're gonna spread all around those areas some very small drop of white. Then we're gonna blend them to clear the color up, and we're gonna fade them. Somehow what we did in this final part of this exercise. We're going to continue our painting on the left part of the sky. This is quite tricky because on the top starts with a blue, and then fading through a yellow ends on the bottom with a light orange. The tricky part is that the blue and the yellow are both primary colors, and if we mix them we get the green that we don't want to see on this sky. So, to make this part we have to work on 5 different colors. We have painted the top part in blue. Right below we need to paint a uniform area with some light cyan. Then, to isolate the cyan from the yellow, we need to set between them a neutral color. In our case, some light gray, which theoretically we can get by mixing the 3 primaries. Then, below the gray, the yellow, and we finally end with the light orange. Here our job is to fade these 5 colors one into the other, this time in a very long transition that takes a large portion of the canvas. So, as we did in this exercise, brushing in the fading lines direction, we're going to make our transition. We have to do the same thing on the right. Here we're going to leave empty the spots where we are going to paint the steps later. The Ferris wheel and these buildings are very blurry, so using some middle dark gray, we're going to paint those spots where we have the cabins, and then, like we did many times before in our exercises, we're going to fade them into the colors around them. For the wheel, we're going to paint an elongated curve area, and we're going to fade it into the light gray. Like, for example, we did many times using the blue and the white in the silk exercise. Now, focusing on this building, we're going to use brown, red, and gray, and we're going to fade them into each other. Then we're going to fade this area into the yellow and the orange of the sky behind. More or less what we did in this exercise. Keep doing what we have done so far on this block of buildings. We're going to check what we have in our model, and we're going to paint the roofs and the facades of this building ending into the river. We should notice that since they are facing the sun, for these buildings we have used a nice warm red and some orange to work on the sunset effects that we want to bring out. We should also say that for this very blurry area that we have just painted, even if we are not 100% accurate with the positions and the shapes, as far as the blurring looks realistic, our brain won't be capable to recognize small differences. Now, getting close to our point of view, the blur in our model becomes lower. And in our representative analysis, this means that we have to increase the number of details, increasing the number of color spots, and reducing the fading length of the transition between them. So, one piece at a time, we're going to check what we have on our model, and we're going to represent it on the support. Also here, since we can't recognize exactly what's inside, we can only have a general idea of what we are representing. Small incongruence won't make any difference. But my suggestion in these cases is that we should try to follow what we have in our model as much as possible anyway. Like, for example, in this area where we can see that we have some people even if we can't see them clearly. And, by the way, this part looks very much like something that we have seen when we have discussed the fundamentals. While we keep getting closer to our point of view, we can actually start seeing quite clearly what we have inside our picture. So, here we have to start to be more precise in our representative analysis, making sure that every single detail is as much as possible similar to our model. Although we still have to blur a little bit the borders between the different colored spots, working them with a brush like we did for the stairs on the top. For example, on this white minivan here, where we have to paint uniformly this part with a very light gray, almost white, to distinguish it from what we have right on top, where we have to use the actual white. While for the reflection of the building around, we're going to use a middle light gray. And to get the blurry effect, we're going to join all these contiguous areas with a very short transition. Here, for example, we have to use a darker gray for this line representing the edge of the door and on this small spot. Or in this window where we have to use a very dark gray, almost black, to represent the external frame, we have to work on the reflection of the sky using a middle light gray, fading it into a small yellow band, and then on the bottom with the darker gray for the building reflection. Or, for example, here where we have to use some middle light gray to represent these two spots projecting the internal frame. So, at the end, as we can see, everyone should be somehow able to make a painting like this if doing the exercises we follow at least the last 3 chapters of the Representative Oil Painting Fundamental video course, where in the first chapter we have seen the fundamentals and we did the first exercises. In the second we have used the abstract as a tool to improve our skills, and at the end we have worked on the representative doing some exercise like the one we did here in the 3rd chapter. Now, before we conclude this video, we should talk about the rest of the stairs and the dummy, which are both transparent. Using the method of the representative analysis that we have seen so far, we should be able easily to represent the remaining part of the stairs, because since at the end the steps are flat glass plates, which are reflecting and projecting and not distorted image, what we have to represent inside them it won't be so different from what we have painted so far. The most problematic parts are the steps sides, because in a very narrow area between 2 straight lines with the color changing, we have to paint a quite long strip with many transitions, something similar to what we have seen in this exercise. The dummy, on the other side, as you can imagine, is the most difficult part of this painting. The distorted image projected by every one of its segments has a very large number of details inside, and painting exactly what we see, as we have done so far, is quite complicated, most of all in a small area like in our painting. So, for example, if we check just the top part of the head, because of the distortion that we have discussed when we have talked about reflections and transparencies, we are going to have a scene even larger and complete of the one that we are representing on the canvas, with more people, more buildings, more cars, and so on. But since this part in our painting is very small, and most of all our brain perception isn't capable to distinguish all these details inside a distorted image projected by a transparent object so complex, we're going to simplify all these images projected by the dummy. The most important thing is that at the end what we represent is somehow similar to the image projected by our model. Because if it's not, our brain is gonna notice it. So, for example, in this part we have used on the background different tones of gray. Lighter on the left, darker on the top, where we also have used some blue. We have used some light gray to represent the steps. Here on the right, on the background, we have used more or less the same gray of the road. And inside, somehow, we have also represented the 3 cars. Now, could we do a better job? Of course. But as we said, we have to remember that this part is a very small piece of a much larger and confused subject, and probably if we spent more time working on it, our brain wouldn't be able to perceive the difference anyway. In this part of the head, we have a transition from a middle blue to a middle light blue, with a spot here where we have this reflex that we're going to paint in white and fade it into the blue. So at the end, our job that theoretically should be more difficult is not. We have to check what we get in our model, simplify it, and paint it on our support. So one piece at a time, we have to complete the rest of the dummy. We have to do some general reworking, and at the end we can say that also this painting is complete. As you have seen in this course, we haven't discussed how to paint single subjects, but more a general method that we can use to represent whatever we want, even something not real like a transparent dummy going up on the stairs, and we made it look realistic. In the next video, to bring this introduction on the neo-metaphysics to an end, we're going to see a next example in which we are going to reinterpret this old subject of mine in a neo-metaphysic style. If you enjoyed this video, we will really appreciate if you could click on like and subscribe to our channel. It will also help us very much if you could leave a comment. Thank you for watching this video and see you in the next one.